International basketball coming right up, and the Pacers have quite a few players participating. We'll talk about who's playing where and when and what to watch for those players in those games. Plus, will the Pacers win more games than last season? We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and the Westside Community News, and to come somewhere else. Stay tuned for that. Today, we are talking about the Pacers, obviously, as we do on the Locked On Pacers podcast, and we are talking about international play. I've been looking forward to this, mostly because I'm excited to see some Pacers guys play again. Some of the non-American born U.S. players will be playing for their home country teams in either a Eurobasket upcoming qualifying Eurobasket play, as well as a 2023 FIBA qualifying games, which is always really fun because those games are like not the Olympic levels, but the pinnacle of basketball internationally for a lot of the countries involved. So the big guns are coming out. A lot of NBA players playing in this Eurobasket, for example. It's one of the most highly popularized Eurobaskets in a long time. And these FIBA games, again, a ton of NBA talent, including three Pacers. So we'll get to it all today. We'll talk about Theis, Goga Bitadze, Daniel Tice, Oshae Brissett, Chris Duarte, and Buddy Hield on today's show. And I picked for all the guys playing one thing I'm excited to see, or one thing I'm looking forward to seeing them do in these games. And then in the third segment, we'll talk about something I thought I could work into a whole show, but after the schedule show yesterday, I figured it should just be a segment of, will the Pacers win more games than last season? So let's start over in Europe with the three European Pacers for this coming season, which is Theis, Daniel Tice, and Goga Bitadze. Bitadze playing for Georgia, obviously, who's hosting the event. Daniel Tice on Germany. And let's just get Servidis done first. This will be quick and easy. He's actually not even on the Lithuania roster. I actually thought maybe there was a chance that's why he was signed at the timing he was actually signed, which was last weekend. He was officially signed to his deal with the Pacers. Was that so he could get to Europe to play in Eurobasket, but he's not even on the roster. So despite being a European-born player, he is not actually playing. Maybe he'll be added to the team later or something like that, but he's not even playing. That one's nice and easy. Let's talk about Goga Bitadze, who's playing for Georgia, the host country. Very big deal for the country of Georgia. Bitadze on the team this year. They've had some friendlies, but he has not played yet, which has been interesting for some people to see. But it's actually not something I think is super concerning or alarming or anything. He was in Indy, obviously, earlier this month at Victory Field for the event the Pacers did with the first pitch and signing some autographs. It was a fan event. It was really cool. He was there, and I talked to him there. He said that was early August. I don't have the exact date. I believe it was around August 3rd, and I can look while I'm talking. But he said that day that he would be in Indy. It was August 5th, that he would be in Indy for at least another week and probably a little more to work on some stuff both on the court and I would assume from a treatment perspective, and then he would go. So that would mean even, like a week ago was maybe the earliest he would even be over there. So between practice times and stuff like that, I wouldn't have expected him to play in the friendlies, but I do anticipate that he will be playing in at least some of the games when he gets over there. The first game for Georgia is against Belgium on September 1st. So that is a week from this coming Thursday. The Georgian roster will play some other NBA guys on that, or some other NBA level talent on that team as well. And what I'm looking forward to seeing from Goga, and I'll talk about this a little bit with Daniel Tice as well, but is, first of all, just some oomph. Like it's kind of jarring when you go back and watch Goga with Mega Basket and some of his overseas teams, because, and some of this is just the way European basketball is played, and some of this is the situation the Pacers have set up for their bigs, and the situation Goga's been in where he's kind of had inconsistent minutes and role, which is, it's really tough to get jerked around like that. But he had a little more oomph to me. It seemed like an overseas play. And they played some zone on Mega Basket, and he had the ball more where it was like easier for him to assert himself and have a consistent role and know what's going on. But I just want to see a little bit more of that. I think that the way the game is played in these Eurobasket games, the passion of international play will lead to that a little bit, but that will be nice to see. And then another part of this is, look, and this is true for Tice as well. I'll talk about this with him in a second. The Pacers are going to play fast. Like after the All-Star break last year, they were so speedy. And even when they were at their best early in the season, pre-acquiring Halliburton, was when they were pushing the pace. McConnell at his best was when they were really good. When he was flying up and down the court. Remember, he had that 3-game stretch where he looked like the best player on the team. Pacers were winning at that time. They were playing fast and good. All that to say, in Carlisle's system, a faster pace of play, to get into your sets quicker or to score in transition or to put pressure on the other team when you're on defense is important. And Bitadze, Goga really did blend in well after the All-Star break. I thought he played well and fit in the system well, but a little more foot speed and a little more speed in general, I think would allow him to fit in with what this team is trying to do, how they're trying to play, and showed he can do a little more, get him more minutes and things like that. If he is able to increase his speed, and it's not even just physical speed. It can be mental speed, processing speed, seeing the patterns right away, seeing all those sort of things happen for this Georgian team where the level is as high as it gets, basically in a non-NBA setting, will be good for him, I think, as they head into the season where his role is going to be fascinating. He might be out of the rotation again, even though Turbonis is over. And that would be fascinating to see where his career goes, what it means for him, and what the Pacers ultimately end up trying to do with him in his 4th season now in the NBA. Again, they play 1 week from Thursday. Daniel Tice is also on the Germany roster, the final European between Servaitis and Bitadze for Eurobasket, although this is something to monitor. I just learned this news 2 days ago, so I'm glad I get to put this on the show. I didn't learn it from like a connected person. I just read a report about it. I should be a little more clear. He's on the German team. He's listed on the roster. He went to Germany and played in their first friendly. They had a game on the 10th, it looked like against Belgium, and he played, and they won. He played, pretty well. Read an article that him and Dennis Schroeder were 2 of the guys who played well for Germany in that game. They ended up beating Belgium by 4 in that game. Franz Wagner of the Magic also played in that game, and then apparently Daniel Theis got injured, and that is the revealing-ish part of this, is that apparently he got hurt. So this is a report from Johnny Askunis on the Eurohoops website, but it says Daniel Theis has been ruled out of next week's games in the 2023 FIBA World Cup qualifiers, and he's considered questionable to play in Eurobasket. That was on August 20th. So they play a couple games late in August, Germany does, as does Goga Bitadze's team, and then a couple more World Cup qualifiers next year, or later in the year, excuse me. Those will be when I think the Pacers are a little more up and running, so he wouldn't be expected to play in those anyway. But being ruled out for the Eurobasket games, not great. So he did play in that first friendly, but hasn't played since. And it doesn't say what the injury is. I'd be curious to find out more about that. But maybe we won't see Daniel Theis. And that injury is the biggest thing to monitor, obviously. An undisclosed injury is never great, but we'll see. Maybe he'll be good to go. And he is listed. This article does describe him as questionable. So perhaps that just means it's a minor thing that he could be good to go. But again, I'm just relaying information I'm reading somewhere else. But I don't think this has been well publicized stateside. So that is something to monitor with Tice. Is he hurt? What's his status? Can he play? And if he does play, similar situation to Goga. Daniel Tice is good. I think he's like basically the average NBA center. If he was a little taller, he'd be like the perfectly average NBA center to me, where he can start on some teams and he's a really good connecting piece, but he's worse on bad teams, right? He was not as good with the Rockets as he was with the Celtics. He was better with the Bulls than he was with the Rockets because he's a connecting piece, right? He shouldn't be asked to do anything, that involves dribbling or creating or bullying on defense. He's a great connecting piece, and he can do that in some lineups for the Pacers team. But again, in a team that's going to want to play fast, and maybe we'll have to put him in situations where he might be a tiny bit overtaxed. I mean, he's going to have to show maybe he's on the wrong side of 30, but a little bit more speed, a little bit more processing ability to be able to hang with the current speed of the Pacers. And maybe that's no problem for him. The Celtics are a little bit faster paced team. And the Rockets are definitely a faster paced team as well, but he didn't fit in as well there. So seeing how he could fit in those settings, right? Plays next to Dennis Schroeder for the German team when he did play in the friendly, for example. Like I think Tice is better suited for it than Bitadze by a mile, but seeing a little bit more from a ground down kind of player would be good to see from a Pacers perspective. But just in general, I mean, I've seen him play a million times, including in the series against the Pacers in the playoffs in 2019. But just getting a more feel for this guy. For me specifically, like I know of him, I know what his general skills are, but I've never had to zero in on him from a Pacers perspective. And this will be the first time since the trade that I'll be able to potentially see the games happen, see how he plays and things like that. So I'm looking forward to that as I am with any basketball involving these Pacers players. So Germany's first game also on September 1st. That's when Eurobasket action officially tips off. I don't know if Tice will be playing or not, but that is their official first game. Now I can pivot over to the FIBA stuff. Stuff is such a bad way to describe it, where you will see some other Pacers playing internationally. Oshae Brissett, Chris Duarte, and Buddy Hield all suiting up. Let's talk about those guys, what to watch for, what their team situation is, things like that. But before we do that, I got to talk to you guys about Rocket Money. If you keep saying you need to make a budget but never do it, if you somehow keep missing credit card payments, or if you're afraid to look at your bank statements, it's time to take control of your financial life. Meet Rocket Money, formerly known as Truebill, our favorite financial app. Why did Truebill change its name to Rocket Money? We'll tell you what we heard. Truebill, now backed by Rocket Companies, has grown from a bill management app into a full-on personal finance empowerment tool that helps over 3 million people with budgeting, lowering bills, canceling subscriptions, and more, saving each of their members on average $700 a year. With all that growth comes the evolution in Truebill's story, a new name. Bottom line, everything you loved about Truebill, but with a fresh look and feel and more resources. Start canceling your unused subscriptions and save money at rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedonnba, or download the app from the App Store or the Google Play Store. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, I can pick any team I want for this. How about you hop on over to Locked On Mavs? Hear more about the Mavs and their funky offseason, where that team is headed, spearheaded by one of the best international players right now, Luka Doncic. Nick and Isaac do a great job over at Locked On Mavs. Let's talk about the FIBA, America's side of this, as those teams push for the 2023 qualifying for the World Cup on the American side. The USA is playing. They are not sending a star-studded group, although some Pacer ties on that team. Brian Bowen, who was on a two-way contract for 2 years with the Pacers, and Jordan Bell, who played with the Mad Ants for part of this past season, will be playing and have played in some friendlies for that Team USA squad, but no current rostered Pacers playing for that team. However, there are still three in these Americas side. Oshae Brissett for Canada, Chris Duarte for the DR, and Buddy Hield for the Bahamas. Buddy Hield already been playing for the Bahamas some this summer, so I suppose we can just start with him. He is playing. Thank you, Caitlin Cooper on Indie Corners, by the way. If you want more details, go there, for getting all this into one place. But the Bahamas coach did say that Buddy Hield and Kai Jones and nearly Pacer DeAndre Ayton will be playing for the Bahamas against Venezuela in their opening game, which is this Thursday, the 25th. Buddy Hield will be playing with the Bahamas team, which is exciting to see. He actually already has played for them a few times this summer. So they played their first couple games in early July. Buddy Hield, not a free agent, wasn't being traded. He said, okay, I'll go play. I have some of those highlights up on my Twitter feed if you want to see how he looked, what he did, how he was able to play. But fantastic would be the answer. They played against the Dominican Republic. No Duarte in that game, but Buddy Hield had 29 points and 8 assists in that game, 5 rebounds. He was their best player by a mile. And then they played the Virgin Islands. They won by 17. Buddy Hield, again, dominant, 24 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, plus 18. The best player on that team. At scoring in general, 24 points was the team high. He was the only player over 20. In the other game, 29. Again, the only player over 20. So he's fantastic in those settings. And I think this is the case for Duarte as well. But I'll start to hammer it home here with Buddy. Something you can see in these international games is this is less the case for Buddy and Tice, for Goga and Tice, given their skill sets. But with a guy like Buddy Hield, who will handle the ball, you get to see what they're like as kind of the primary creator, how they create their own shots. Can they set up their teammates? 8 assists for Buddy Hield in that one game. And remember, Buddy Hield had some playmaking skills with the Pacers that he hadn't shown in prior stops. Can he keep showing that off? Is that something that can translate to the Pacers? I will definitely be watching for that and the way he's able to create his own shots, carve out little crevices to be a scorer and a shooting type. And in the case of a guy who could be on the trade block for the Pacers this season, they'll, of course, hope he doesn't get injured. That's the case for all of these guys. Duarte, as we're coming up, a toe injury. Bitadze's had injury history his whole career. Tice already talking about an injury. They definitely don't want any of these guys to get hurt, especially anyone who could be on the move and potentially losing out on money or opportunity in their future. But it'll be fun to watch Buddy Hield be the best player on his team and see how he creates, how he attacks, and things like that. They, again, tip off against Venezuela on the 25th this Thursday. Chris Duarte announced he's playing for the Dominican Republic. I don't know if Karl Anthony Towns is playing for that team or not. He has already been playing in some friendlies, struggled to find a ton of box scores. I believe one of them I did find. They played against St. John's, the college team, in a friendly, and he had 29 points. Chris Duarte is, in fact, playing for the DR and dominating for that game as well. I couldn't find a box score. I was reading that off of the St. John's website, which is a great source because it's straight up from St. John's themselves. But I would have liked to see the box score, see how he played, how his teammates did comparatively. But you can find a lot of those highlights out online from that game. He looked fantastic. And similar to Buddy Hield, one of the things I'll be watching is, can he be that primary, right? How is he driving? How is he playmaking? How is he creating his own shots? Excuse that noise you just heard. I'm a little sick, so can't help that sort of thing. But if he's really scoring 29 points and playing very well in these settings, how can that continue throughout international play? Is that something that can translate to the Pacers as his handle has looked a little better in Summer League, for example, as the game slows down for him heading into year two, as he does transition into his first normal offseason where he can work with Rick Carlisle, where he can work with his teammates and get better? How does he look in this setting for the first time as an NBA player? I'm really looking forward to that. And remember, this is something I was reminded of talking to Josh Lloyd of Locked On Fantasy Basketball today. Like in the JUCO level and in general, kind of pre-NBA, Duarte played a lot of point guard. Like, he wasn't like a pass first kind of point guard, but he did handle it a lot. He does have those skills, being a self-creator with some talent, with some ability, right? Can he get some of those skills back in the fold? Can he become a secondary creator who can really kind of be a good passer and scorer next to Tyrese Halliburton? These sort of skills he can work on with the Dominican Republic team, or at least refine. I shouldn't say work on like it's a practice setting. Will be fascinating to see. Same day as Buddy Hield and Oshae Brissett. The first game for Chris Duarte is this Thursday against Panama on the 25th. Same deal with all these guys. Hopefully no injury, but Duarte dealing with the toe thing, seeing how he is, if he's not getting hurt, how he's playing on that toe, things like that will be very important, because that was one of the surprises of Summer League to me, is learning that he was still dealing with that injury. Third and final guy, Oshae Brissett. I'm surprised I have to talk about this. Not because I don't think Oshae Brissett is worthy of a spot on the Canadian team. He totally is one of the best Canadian players in the world. I thought in Canada Basketball's original announcement, when they said that Brissett would be sitting out this cycle, that meant he wouldn't be playing this summer, but that was really just the July setting of training camp and games. It's very confusing the way it was worded, but again, thanks to Kalen for getting this all in one place for me. Canada Basketball says 15 athletes coming for their training camp ahead of the FIBA qualifiers. Of those 15 athletes, yes, Oshae Brissett is on the list, so who knows if he's playing in games, but certainly a part of the camp setting that they have already started. That started today for me talking on the 22nd, yesterday at least for you listening on the 23rd. So he has already started, that camp setting has already started. Tons of NBA talent in this group. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, R.J. Barrett, Khem Birch, Dylan Brooks, Lou Dort. I don't need to read through them all. Purdue center Zach Edey on there, Shea, former Pacer Corey Joseph, a bunch of NBA talent. A great setting for Brissett to work on his game, play with other talented players. They play Argentina in their first game, you'll never guess, on Thursday on the 25th. And then they play again against Panama. I think that's the only two games Canada will be playing. In the setting, it will be fun to see if Oshae Brissett actually does play now that his contract situation is set and things like that. The thing for him to watch is, one, is he just continuing to improve? He got better from year to year in terms of refining new skills with his handle and cutting ability. Last year, after being really just a shooter for the Pacers in that first season when he was with the team for about a month and a half, can he continue to add to that, right? Can he add an off-the-dribble shot at all, a reliable one? Where does his on-ball defense improve? Things like that. And what a good setting to work on these skills with, again, a bunch of NBA-level talent. Canada team, very good. Probably the favorites in every game they will be playing for the rest of the month. How does Brissett look if he does play in these games? Does he look better? Does playing alongside some of these other talented players help him learn some new skills, and he'll be back reunited with Nate Bjorker, former Pacers head coach, who I believe is a part of that Canada staff. I shouldn't say will be. I said I think he will be, since that he's been a part of that staff for years and years. But a ton of good opportunities for him here to kind of show some improvement and play with a very talented roster that could help him heading into the season. Not on Team Canada, Andrew Nembhard or Ben Mathurin, two rookies. I cannot blame them after the pre-draft cycle they went through. But those are the other two international players. Everyone else on the Pacers is born in the USA and not playing in these games. So I'm looking forward to seeing this international play, seeing what Pacers shine and look a little better. And hopefully none of them get injured heading into the season, because that would just be, as Pacers fans know well, with Paul George summers and summers ago, These international games can end up devastating if the wrong thing happens. So that is, of course, the number one thing the Pacers will be hoping for, beyond skill growth and a showed-off experience internationally for these guys. Let's take one more break and talk about something that I wanted to do a segment on. Will the Pacers win more games than last year? Let's talk about it. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, Locked On Nuggets. Why not? Go. They are overseas now. Adam Mares is one of their hosts in Serbia, in Jokic land. Plus Jamal Murray is on the Canada team with Oshae Brissett. So go check out Locked On Nuggets. Adam Mares and Matt Moore do a killer job. I was going to make this a whole show, but I've decided a segment is better after yesterday's show. Will the Pacers win more games than last season? Last year, the Pacers were miserable. They went 25-57. One of the worst seasons in franchise history. That's really bad. Beating that should not be a high bar to clear, but DraftKings set the Pacers over-under for wins this season at 24.5, and they tend to do a very good job setting those lines. Can the Pacers win more than last year, even though they're projected to win less or about the same? It's a very interesting question because when Adam and I, on yesterday's show, if you want to hear more about the schedule, ran through it game by game, he only got 20 wins. I got 26. Which is more than last year. And that's what really ignited me to rethink about this question that I typed in my notes as a topic a while ago. So can the Pacers win 26 or more games this season? Well, I think that asking this question, can they win more games than last year, is a little bit of an unfair starting point and a disservice to last year's Pacers. Last year's Pacers had a decent net rating. I won't say a good net rating, but a decent net rating. It ended at minus 3.6. That's not good. Again, that's not good. That's bad. But it's not 25 wins bad. Basketball Reference has a formula every season that takes every team's net rating, plots it versus wins and losses, makes a regression line, and says, okay, how many games should you have won with your net rating? The Pacers, with their net rating, should have gone 32-50 last year. That is still bad, but not as bad. 25 wins. That means they were 7 games behind their expected win-loss, which basically means they lost a bunch of close games that could go either way in theory, that don't affect your net rating much, but count as a loss, right? So the Pacers' baseline for this assignment to me, yes, it's 25 wins, but they were really about a 32-win team in theory last year. In fact, you just zoom out and look at net rating specifically. The Pacers had a minus 3.6 net rating, 24th in the league. Right ahead of them, the Washington Wizards, minus 3.4 net rating, 23rd in the league. The Wizards won 37 games this past season, right? Or 35 games, 10 more than the Pacers. That is how bad the Pacers were in close games. They were right by the Lakers. They were within a half point of net rating of the Los Angeles Lakers, who won 33 games. The Pacers were not a 25-win team in terms of quality last year, but they were in terms of record. All that to say, I think that the first thing I would like to say when I think about will the Pacers win more games than last year is I think they will definitely have a worse net rating than last year. Despite the steps forward you will see from some young guys, which we'll talk about in a second, I think they will be a worse team. They do not have Sabonis anymore. They do not have Brogdon anymore. They do not have Karis LeVert anymore. They don't have Torrey Craig anymore. Some of those guys didn't have a ton of impact on the Pacers last year, but some of them had a huge impact on the Pacers last year. Those guys are gone. The Pacers will be worse in that iteration. And again, they were like almost, not quite, and this is not a high bar. This is not me gassing up last year's Pacers. This is just a fact. They were nearly a 500 team at points in December. Like they were an okay team before the rails fell off. Now they'll be worse than that. Their net rating will be worse. And yet, I still think they could win more games. Even if you drop down to minus 5.2 net rating, 1.6 whole points per 100 possessions, worse than the Pacers last year. That's what the Kings finished at, minus 5.2. They won 30 games. The Pistons had a minus 7.7 net rating. They won 23 games, which is close. The Thunder had a minus 8 net rating. They won 24 games. The Blazers won 27 with the worst net rating in the league. All that to say, it is very possible for the Pacers to lose a ton of net rating and still win more games than last year. And a lot of that will come down to those close games that they lost a ton of last year. I wrote a whole piece about this, but they played in 45 games that had clutch situations. First of all, that means in over half of the Pacers games, with 5 minutes or less to go, they were within 5 points. They were right with the other team. That means, in theory, air quotes a little bit because this isn't entirely true, they were a coin flip in a lot of those games. They went 11-34 in those 45 games. They went 4-19, as I've tweeted about a ton throughout the season, in games decided by 4 or less. If those numbers stabilize at all, even if the Pacers are worse, they should be as close to, if not better, in the win column than last season, right? That seems like a normal thing to stabilize, even if your clutch play still stinks. So I think that is one way that they will naturally improve. It's just slightly better clutch play. Their defense has to get better in the clutch, as I wrote about them. Their offense has been miserable in the clutch for years and years. That's sort of an expectation for a young team, but if it can be better, that is one way they can easily improve this season. Just better luck in close games, even if, again, they go 7 and 15 in clutch games. That's still bad, but that's like acceptable and what you expect for a bad team in 50-50, air quotes, close late games. In those situations, that's what you expect. So that's one reason I think they could win more games than last year, despite likely being a worse team. 2, internal improvement. Now, obviously, again, they lost Sabonis. They lost Brogdon. They don't have LeVert anymore. They are a worse team. But, reminder, a lot of guys that actually played in the rotation for a lot of last season. Chris Duarte played a bunch. Oshae Brissett played the most games of anyone. Isaiah Jackson played in over half their games. Miles Turner's still on the team. That's 4 players who were in their top whatever last year and are back and should be better. They're all young. They're all 26 or younger. They should be better and in either a better defined role or more role than last year. Even if they're still not great players, they'll be better than last year and being in the rotation. Plus, guys like Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Smith, who were in the rotation a bunch last year, and Goga Bitadze less so, they will also get better, right? There are names who played a lot for the Pacers who won 25 games who will be better than they were last year. That's close to your full rotation. Aaron Nesmith was not on the team last year. He might be better. He might not be. But either way, another player who could, in theory, grow, be a better player, and help them win more games, right? They have a lot of options of guys who could be better and lead them to more wins. And another thing, I have a lot of random factors. Another factor in their favor to potentially win more games. First summer since 2020 with the same coach, McMillan fired, Bjorkgren fired, Carlisle hired, and he's still the coach. There's stabilization in the coaching seat for the first time since the Pacers were in the postseason. That should be helpful for growth. Carlisle likes teaching. He'll have a lot of opportunities to do that with no turnover there. That will be helpful for this team in their quest to improve. Is having a little stability in leadership positions. Rick Carlisle, I think, will be a good coach for this developing Pacers team heading into this season, and they have a known direction as a result of that, right? And COVID really sunk their season a lot last year. I think that impact will be lessened this coming season, or maybe it'll be more spread out instead of just right when the Pacers' schedule got easy at the end of December last year, boom, their whole team's knocked out. It just derailed their season. It was already falling off the tracks at that point, but that just kicked it off completely. And the last one, last year, they had about 4 players who I think could have thought on any given night they were the best player on the team. Probably 3, but maybe 4. That is no longer the case. Tyrese Halliburton is the guy. He will have the keys. He will be the driver. I think more defined roles for this team will be helpful in everybody knowing what they need to do, knowing what they need to work on, understanding how they can develop alongside their teammates, knowing everybody's role, knowing who the best guys are, and setting up for success in that way. So there are a lot of points in favor that the Pacers will be worse this year. They're much younger. They have a lot of newness on the roster. They're going to be giving a ton of minutes to younger, inexperienced players who have not been net positives in their career. And because of all those things, the thesis of this argument is I think the Pacers will be worse than last year. I think everybody who's really close to the Pacers, watches the Pacers, whatever, thinks they'll be worse than last year. However, I will add that I think the Pacers will win more games than last year because despite having a worse net rating, I think a lot of their luck will balance out, and I think that they have enough high variability players and enough internal improvement to win more than the 25 games they won last year. I think they will win 26 or 27, as I said in the schedule exercise, and doing that exercise made me want to do this segment. Not worth the whole show, but I thought it was an interesting discussion. And if you think the Pacers will win more or less games than last year, if you're on YouTube, leave a comment down there. Or if you're on Twitter or just an internet user, let me know on Twitter at TEastNBA what you think the Pacers win total will be this coming season. I'm bad at planning and writing, timing, and things like that. But the next episode, if it's tomorrow or Thursday, will be a player interview. And then Friday, potentially another one, but not a former Pacer, just a former player talking about various Pacers topics. So stay tuned. This week should have some fun podcasts coming shortly, which will be super, super fun. And yeah, we'll be talking about how Rick Carlisle can coach this team, a lot of summer league. You'll see. It'll be interesting topics with these two players who are both still around or in the NBA. Should be super fun. So thank you guys a ton for listening. Have a great day, and we will see you soon.